So just to briefly introduce myself, I'm Richard Limbrough. I'm a planning officer. I manage a team in the planning service, but I'm kind of tech and trying to drag the planning system into the 21st century, or even the 20th century would be nice, is sort of something I'm passionate about. So I'm kind of ended up being involved in a lot of these projects. As part of the C19 challenge, we put in a bid, and it's around digital place-based engagement, and there are two strands to that, which I'll go into in a moment. You can read about this project. Best place, there's a Medium blog here. It's my Medium blog at the moment, but we'll get round to kind of working out a better common strategy for this as we keep going down it. We're at a fairly early stage in the project, so if you want to get involved or tweet us, you can find those details there. So we are working with Camden are leading on it, but we're working with Middlesbrough on it. It's quite interesting having Middlesbrough as a partner, because they felt like they were sort of left behind in a lot of digital stuff. So we wanted a partner who we could kind of learn from their needs and what they need to do to try and bring them up to speed. Although obviously there's still a lot we can learn. We've also got people from Bucks involved in it, which hopefully they'll get more and more involved as the project goes on. And then obviously we're being supported by the collaboration unit and also the digital land team, who've been really brilliant in terms of just providing that support and linking us up with other relevant projects. So the two strands, the first one is really is a playbook, and this is really about trying to get people up to speed on the digital engagement. There's a lot of engagement within planning at various points, and I think with varying degrees of success in terms of impact. So what we're trying to do is write down effectively what we've adapted, and the users of that initially are going to be LPAs, local planning authorities, but also other placemaking services. So not necessarily just planning. We could be looking at things like regeneration teams, highways, parks, anything that's really place-based. And what we want to try and do is set the foundation of something, the idea being around a place-based profile. So using the information we get from people and from residents from various points of consultation, and actually creating something that's a little bit more kind of added value, where we can extract a lot more information and use it to inform a whole range of decisions or build services. And so the users for that will be much wider, including kind of private sector investment and so on. So in terms of what we've been doing, we've done a lot to respond to COVID. We had to get our planning committees online. We had to have those as full participation, and obviously we had to we were trying to develop a system for that while we were waiting for the government to change the legislation to allow it to happen. And the planning committee was the first public meeting that we had in Camden Council, so we were sort of like the test run. We developed that in collaboration with our digital team and with our committee services. But we've also done a lot of other kind of expanding on existing tools that we had been using, some digital platforms, but then we had to transfer kind of these face-to-face drop-in sessions and things like that. We had to find new digital platforms and tools to allow us to do that. So the first stage was like writing it down. We'd learned a lot from it, but we kind of need to keep making a note of that, and also share the learning, because putting when everyone was scrabbling to try and get their committees to run virtually, councils were all coming together and working on it, but again, it's like no one was really writing it down. So we're kind of writing down all those lessons so people can do it. And the point around this kind of place-based profile is that there's lots of points in the planning process. It's in theory this circular process where you come kind of plan making, and then you provide guidance, area frameworks, start to allocate sites, then you go through kind of pre-application discussions with landowners, you go through application stages, and then you're looking at delivery and monitoring, and then that informs your plan making. And at each point there are different consultation platforms that are used for different consultation events. But we do what a lot of local government and central government's done for a long time. We're very, very good at collecting huge amounts of information, and then we sort of sit on it and we don't do much with it. So for us, it's about, okay, well, how can we use information we collect at different points to inform services and decisions across other areas of the planning process? And that then also allows us to get people to come in at a different point in the process, but maybe we can then signpost them to these other areas and make it kind of geographical or topic based. So if they see an application in their street, maybe we can actually then use that opportunity on a digital platform to signpost them towards an area framework that's also being consulted on. And that sort of leads us to the second strand, which is the digital planning notice. It's the one thing that didn't really get digitized in response to COVID. We're still sticking notices on lampposts. But planning notices have two problems. One is like physically what they look like, but they sort of disappear off into the background. People miss them, especially during COVID. We've got lots of people saying we can't actually go out, so we're not seeing these planning notices. So we want to sort of make them just more attractive. These are ones that Atlanta did, which, you know, is just a cool bit of graphic design, but it's quite important. It's the idea of standardization and something that's much clearer and more accessible to the community so they can understand what it is. But then what we want to do is kind of create a digital twin of that and have something which is geographical, so that maybe you have a look at something in your local area, or you go down the street, pings up on your phone, and you can see a consultation. And the point is that could be richer as well, rather than just basic information on those notices, especially on the digital twin. We can make that much richer, but that is dependent on some other projects. Paul mentioned them earlier, Ripper and BOPS, which are in the planning area, and those are all very much around trying to change planning information from a series of PDFs to actually data. And if we can sort of sit on that foundation that those projects are making, we can get much richer kind of consultation material for members of the public, so they can have a better understanding of what's going on and a better input in terms of shaping it. We're at an early stage. We're only on our second sprint at the moment, but we've already realised we need to rethink about how we collect that information. So like I just said, we're looking at that in terms of receipt of information into the planning system from applicants. But what we've realised is actually we can rethink this in terms of consultation material too. So rather than asking for comments and documents from people, and you know, we can actually think about how we want to structure that in a way that makes it easier to aggregate it and create this kind of place profile. And the other thing that's really come up is closing the gap on these different tools of consultation. There are lots and lots of different methods of consultation, and this is one of the exercises we did in the first sprint, which was around mapping these different tools that we use, digital platforms, and mapping their effectiveness against where they actually, where we say they are against where they are in the real world. And you see some are like they are just basic consultation material, like a press notice, it just goes in the press. But there are tools around our standard local plan consultation where actually I think it is basically just consultation, yet we're sort of selling it a little bit more as a collaborative thing. So we need to think about why that gap is so wide there, and how do we close it? How do we make it more of a collaborative consultation? And then we're just thinking about outputs from the project in terms of the playbook at the moment. I don't think we're going to be looking at a GUI at a front end. This is one of my doodles of one of the meetings. So I just kind of, rather than making it all fancy, I just scanned in my doodle. But it's the idea that we sort of put tags and classifications on material and put it in a structured way, and then we just make that accessible. There's obviously then questions around, okay, who builds a front end, or does anyone need to, can we just leave that to others to build the different front ends for different purposes, different users? But then there's still that question around how, if we can find a structured way of showing this depending on different user needs and what they need to find out, is there then going to be a question around how do we continue to maintain this and feed into it, and who maintains that? So in terms of where we are next, we're starting to kind of lay the foundations of our user research a bit more, and we are also looking at getting our delivery partner, which we're going through the procurement process at the moment. Hopefully they're going to be appointed in the next few weeks, and then they will be working on the coding for the digital planning notice. And just a call out really for anyone who's would like to help us out with the project in this kind of initial phase of user research of the playbook. We'd really be interested to hear from people outside of our partners what kind of tools and platforms you're using, and what you've done in terms of digital engagement with people in place. And also, how would you want to access that information? What kind of how would you want to find out about these different tools and platforms that could help you in terms of your place shaping consultation. So if you do want to get in touch, there's my Twitter handle, and there's our project one. Get in touch, and I'll post up the link to the blogs as well, to the sprint notes, and you can find our show and tells on YouTube as well, which are all linked from our blog post. So get in touch if you want to help. Thanks a lot.